Have you wondered why native speakers sound a bit different from each other? That's because they speak different accents. The language is one, but the pronunciation might be a little bit different between speakers of English. There are two major accents in the English language, the American English and the British English. And when I say the British English, I'm referring to the modern RP. And when I say the American English, I'm referring to the general American English. And this is important for you to know because you need to choose one accent and then learn it for two reasons. Number one is consistency. If you are consistent with one accent, meaning that you speak in one accent and you don't use any other accent, then it's easy for people to predict what you are saying. And that will mean that it's going to be easy to understand you. And then for the second reason, it doesn't sound good to be mixing up accents. So for those two reasons, I highly recommend that you choose one accent. Now, which accent to go for? Should you go for the American English or the British English? It really depends on what you like. If you like the British English, then go for it. If you like the American English, then go for it as well, okay? But I also want you to consider two things, okay? I want you to consider the system of the country that you live in or the country that you want to move to. So if the country that you are living in or that you want to move to had in some way a relationship with the UK, then it's highly likely that that country is using the UK's way of learning things and stuff like that, so it's recommended that you go for the British English. However, if the country that you want to move to is the United States or a country that has no history with the UK, maybe it wasn't colonized by the UK, then in that case it's recommended that you go for the American English. But it really depends on your passion, what you like, and at the end of the day it's the same language and it's not gonna matter which accent that you go for. In this video, we'll go over the basic pronunciation differences between British English and American English. I'll be doing that by giving you common words and demonstrating for you how it's pronounced in British English and how it's pronounced in American English. And for your information, if you haven't figured this out already, I am speaking in modern RP accent, which is the British English that I'll be showing you. I'll be switching to American English to American accent when I'm showing you the American pronunciation, okay? So are you ready? Let's start. So the first pronunciation difference between British English and American English lies in this letter, R. R in British English, but R in American English. So at the beginning of a word, in both accents, the letter is pronounced, okay? So things like red, round, reap, and so on. However, if the letter R is towards the end of a word or at the end of a word, in British English it's not pronounced, but in American English it is pronounced. So now look at these words. In British English it's part, hard, and dart. In American English it is part, hard, and dart. So the R is pronounced. Examples of words where the R is at the end include car, far, and jar. In American English, we'll read them as car, far, and jar. So this is one of the biggest differences between British accent and American accent. There's one thing that you should know about the letter R in British English. So remember how I said when the letter R is at the end of a word, it's not pronounced. The exception is when the letter R is followed by a word that is starting with a vowel sound, that R might be pronounced. So something like, the car is here, okay? Look at this, the car is here. That's how normally you would expect someone to pronounce that sentence in British English. But sometimes you might hear the car is here, the car is here. So when there is an R at the end of a word and then the beginning of the next word begins with a vowel sound, then we pronounce that R, okay? The car is here. Another thing that you should know about the letter R in British English, is that when a word ends with a vowel sound and then the next word is beginning with a vowel sound, an R is introduced. Now, I want you to look at this example. India is a big country. It might become India is a big country. India is a big country. So there is an R that has been introduced here. So that's called the intrusive R. So it's something that you should be aware of because British people tend to make these things, so don't be surprised by it. Okay, now to the second difference between American English pronunciation and British English pronunciation is the T sound in the middle. So in British English, the T is pronounced, it's enunciated very well, whereas in American English, it's more like a D. So in words like butter and bitter, in British English, that's how we're going to pronounce them. But in American English, they become butter and bitter. Also, this word, better in American English, but better in British English. Another difference is the R and the A sounds. For example, look at these words. In British English, they can be pronounced in two ways. So the first one is bath, path, grass, and dance. The other British way of pronouncing these words is bath, path, grass, and dance. And this is the group of people that I find myself in. I speak the British English, but I don't use the first method of pronouncing these words. I use the second method. In American English, these words are pronounced as bath, path, grass, and dance. Pretty much the same as what I would say when I'm pronouncing these words. Another pronunciation difference between these two accents is the O sound. The O sound is a very British sound. It's in words like hot, not, and box. But in American English, these become heart, not, and box. I also want you to note that when the T is at the end of a word, it is not pronounced as a T, like we don't enunciate it in American English the way we do in British English, so it becomes something like not, okay, not. So again, the O sound is a very British sound. Hot, not, box, but in American English it is heart, not, and box. Another difference is that in some words, there's a U sound which is introduced in British English, whereas there is none in American English. So I want you to look at these examples. So these words, in British English, it is new, tune, and duty. But in American English, it is new, tune, and duty. So it is also something to note. And I also want to draw your attention to the fact that some British people, instead of that U sound, they introduce a J sound. So instead of saying duty, they'll say duty. Instead of saying duke, they'll say duke. That is when the U sound is introduced after a D. But when it's introduced after a T, it becomes a ch sound, okay? So instead of tune, it becomes tune, okay? Instead of YouTube, it becomes YouTube. And the last pronunciation difference that I'm going to highlight is vowel reduction in British English. So let's look at these two words. In American English, it is secretary and military. But in British English, it is secretary and military. It's also fine to say military and secretary in British English, but you might likely hear someone say secretary and military when they are speaking the British English. Now that you know the importance of focusing on one accent, I would really urge you to avoid perfectionism. It's good to be able to pronounce words like a native speaker would do, but if you can't really get there, It's not the end of the world. The aim of focusing on one accent is to minimize the effects of your mother tongue so that people can understand you better. And if you have achieved 80% native-like pronunciation, that's enough. What matters is the message. Have you conveyed it? Did the people understand what you wanted to tell them? That is what truly matters. This is it for this video. I hope it was beneficial. See you in another one, and goodbye.